Greetings, my name is Wonder, and today I'm going to be showing you the most important feature of scripting through Godot: export variables. Export variables are something that you can define your variable as. So if I put in okay, I finally did that correctly. If we give it a type, string, we can go into the inspector tab and enter a string. It will ask for text for this variable or name variable. Now, the way I explain export variables, or the way I've understood them, is that this is how you can create custom properties in Godot. For example, I have these two markers, okay? This is a black marker and this is a blue marker. Now let's say that these are the same type of marker, same class of marker. This marker is a character body 2D and this marker is a character body 2D. Now the character body 2D has a custom function inside of Godot called move and slide. I think that's what the function is, where it can gain the velocity. Velocity is custom to the character body 2D. You're not going to find a built-in velocity. I spelled velocity right. What's true is that the velocity variable is not going to be common in every single type of class. So if I have a node and I try to enter in the velocity inside of a function, I'll have to define that. Inside of a character body 2D, or our marker here, it has velocity built into it, okay? So now that we understand this concept, we understand that velocity can be defined as a custom property. That this has velocity and let's say this doesn't. You can have velocity built into the character body 2D, but what if I want to make these markers do two different things? I want them to have the same ability to write. These two markers can both write, but I want them to do it in different ways, or have different things, or be different colors. Some of the things I just mentioned are done automatically in Godot. These two markers that I have are different colors, and through the inspector tab, there is a modulate, I'm pretty sure I'm saying that correctly, a modulate property inside of each node where you can change the color. Now these, I would also say, are basic properties. These are properties that are common to almost every single node that's inside of Godot. So understand this. This will have a modulate property, this character body 2D. This will have a modulate property in this character body 2D. And this will say is a static body. This will have a modulate property too, where I can change the color automatically. Now, we also get into other things where there are things that are specific to our character here. So in the character body 2D inspector tab, you'll actually find, I'm pretty sure it's something where you have a drop down and it's either floating or grounded. Don't diss the handwriting. So we have these two things, are floating and grounded, and this is inside of the character body 2D tab. If we go to the inspector tab, we'll find some type of property where we get to define it as either floating or grounded. But let's say I went into a regular node 2D, and I went into the inspector tab of this node. I would not find this floating grounding property unless I added it into there using an export variable. So let's trace back what we understand. Each node in Godot has different properties. Some of these properties are unique and some of these are not. With an export variable, we are able to, what I call, create our own properties in Godot. Let's say that I wanted to set a velocity for this static body 2D. I could create an export variable, velocity. And instead of making it a type string, let me actually erase this the correct way. I can make it a type 2. So when I go into the inspector tab of this static body 2D, it's going to show me a vector 2, and I'm going to be able to input any number that I want. So we understand this concept, that we have properties inside of Godot. Some of these are unique, some of these are basic, and then we also have the ability to create our own. But with the export variable, there's so much more we can do than just set a velocity. We can change the types of variables that we use inside of our game, or type of scenes that we use in our game. I did something recently in this game that I had Eclipse, which was a parkour game. Now, I have two basic enemies inside of there. There's a duck and a bat. Now, these two characters are the same scene. And that might confuse some of you that are newer to Godot. Because how am I supposed to create something that is the same scene but does different things? And it's simple. You use export variables. Now let's start back again on how the application process of this, I should say. So let's say we have another export variable. Okay, once again, do not mind that. Okay, so we have this export variable, all right? And let's say that we have the goal of changing how the texture looks, how the scene looks. Do we want to make it a duck or a bat? We create a texture, okay? And then that texture is going to be the property of texture 2D. So let's say that this is what we have as our texture, all right? So in this inspector tab, we're going to get this little pop-up where it's going to ask for the texture, all right? And then it's going to show us this little box. So in this drop-down, we can actually select what texture we want. And why is that important? That means whenever I add this enemy scene, or let's say this is the enemy scene, and every single time we add this to our main scene, so even though we don't have a texture automatically defined in here, we can go inside of the main scene, go to our enemy scene, or our enemy instance that's inside of the main scene, and declare our texture in here. But once we add the texture, it's not going to automatically change. So we're going to have to set some conditions. Like this, where we create the texture, we can have it where we use our ready function. That's where we do whatever is listed here as soon as the game runs. Okay, so we can grab our texture and we can say that maybe we have a sprite declared in the scene already. We do sprites 2D, getting the current sprite inside of our thing. Once again, this is inside of the enemy scene. The script is inside of the enemy scene. And then we say its texture is equal to the texture that we set up here. Now, understand the flow of this, okay? We have an @export variable that's defined as the texture, okay? So we can set any texture that we want inside of this variable. So as we throw it into the main scene, we throw the enemy scene inside of the main scene, we can set that texture up here, okay? So let's say we have this little guy over here, you know? He's in our files, a little bit lonely. He wants a home. So we give him a home inside of this inspector tab right here, okay? What our game will essentially do, as soon as the main scene is ran, we're going to gather the texture that we defined up here, and then once we gather it, we're going to change the sprite's texture. It's going to change the sprite's texture to what we defined up here. Okay, so I got completely cut off, and I'm extremely mad, because I was cooking. But what I was trying to say at the end of that video, you're able to get the sprite's texture through this little process. But I'm going to be showing you another example, which I just explained to basically myself for the past 5 minutes. So bear with me a little bit. I have this absolute mess of a scene here, okay? But my goal for the scene is to have this little cute guy in the middle. I want to be able to move him to the right or the left, okay? But I also want it to change depending on wherever it is at the screen. So if I have something here and here, I want our player to be able to understand that and then move in those two directions. Now, the biggest error that you're going to get through this is that the simplest way to do this is to hard code it, which is to basically say when this player's position equals vector 2 983 364, move to the other direction, and when it equals negative 3,587 to 923, move to this direction. Okay, that's the simplest way to do it. But if I want to make it so there's different points where the player can move, I'm not going to be able to do that because it's going to be hard coded into the system. So the way I can expand this, or the way I can make this easier on myself, is to create export variables. Now there's another concept that I will touch on right now, which is how export variables can also gain nodes inside of your tree. So in here, this is what we have inside of our script. We have two variables defined, our right position and our left position. easiest way or simplest way I could do this is just define these two as a node. Okay? Now, when I create these as a node, inside of our inspector tab here, it will ask for something. Like I've explained before, it creates your own property inside of the inspector tab. It's gonna ask for something. And what you're gonna wanna do is define something over here. Inside here, we have our tree. It has a node 2D, a static body, an area 2D, and two marker 2Ds, okay? So we have these two things inside of our tree. And the way Godot works is that actually every node is derived off of this node class right here, this white node. So if I input this export variable and say that it's gonna be the type of a node, then it can be any of these that I list over here, regardless of how many that I add inside of the tree. But to make this simpler on ourselves is that as our tree gets a little bit bigger, it's gonna be harder to find what we actually.
Just for clarification, considering that I didn't explain it well in the video, I just wanted to explain that defining it as a node is not a bad thing. It's just that the marker 2D is what I was using instead.
Want. So we're going to have to do something where we just define the type, which is very simple. All we have to do is say that we want this right position or left position to be a specific type.
This process would work no matter what you define the right or left position as long as you have the correct behavior inside of the enemy scene, it will still work.
So if we want it to be a static body 2D, we would define it as static body 2D, and it would only detect this when we are selecting our right position. Now in our case, we're going to want to use this marker 2D. Now, once again, you can use a static body, an area, or a node. It's not going to matter how you do this, but a marker 2D is just the basic way that Godot kind of implements a node just meant for counting position. So I just use that just because. So we're going to define that as our two positions here. This is going to be our marker 2D, and then 6, I keep doing that. And then this is going to be our marker 2D down here. So when we go to this right position, we can do two things. We can say our marker 2D, we go up here, and we can set that to our left position. Or we can say this marker 2D, we can go up and set this as our right position. And what this will do is now we have these two positions that are labeled this node, and we can make them anywhere. If we wanted our marker 2D to be located here and our other marker 2D to be located here, we can change that without affecting the script because it's going to have the behavior. My goodness. I feel like I'm getting sold right now because why is it showing me that it's working and it's not? Okay, I'm going to make this quick. What I basically explained is that once you have the behavior set in, that when it's going to the right, it moves to the left, and when it moves to the left, it goes to the right, then you're gonna be fine, because then you can replicate this with other enemies, or set your position over here, and then set your position over here, and change it regardless of what the scene is saying. I'm hoping that my storage didn't cut out again. It didn't. Okay. A lot of lines and a lot of concepts, but you shouldn't overwhelm yourself. Apply the... Okay, before I got caught off once again, all I was trying to explain is that you don't need to rush yourself. To be completely honest with you, it took me a while for me to actually understand how export variables work or how I can use them inside of your game. And the only way that you're going to be able to understand them yourself is by applying it. So watch back this tutorial, go through some of the things I listed, and just try them out. Add an export variable to a scene, add it to another scene, and then see how you can gain other variables or change them inside of the main scene. Try and understand how the basic and complex properties work inside of Godot. Understand them for yourself. And if none of those steps work, I do have a Discord where you can I keep messing that up. I do have a Discord that's going to be in the description of this video where you can communicate with me directly and start to understand some of these concepts. So if there was still some confusion, you can ask me about that. I also will be looking at YouTube comments for any feedback or, once again, any troubles. So just let me know. Once again, I really hope you understand the usefulness of export variables. But for now, wonder out. Wonder out. Wonder out.